Welcome back to our week 3 video lecture in digital media literacy. It's Dr. Castleberry here, taking questions and hopefully producing this ongoing dialogue in asynchronous fashion so you can watch it wherever, whenever. You can go back to the readings, think about it, cue it up, read and follow along. You can read aloud or to yourself as I'm droning on. Anyway, we're looking at some questions. We're still hanging with Megan. Megan Denon's got some insights here she wants to share. We're gonna talk it out. All right, we got a powwow going on today. So, looking still at Marcel Denise's chapter 11 of Popular Culture. Megan comments, the idea of the global village, another Marshall McLuhan term, closely affiliated. He could have easily taken it from someone, as we already discussed. The idea of the global village in popular culture in relation to the internet makes me wonder how culture-specific pop culture will be in the future. Our current discussion of pop culture is obviously within the context of American pop culture. However, I encounter pop culture influenced by, for example, Asian artifacts all the time. Hello Kitty would be one example that had a cultish following but has emerged to become a pop culture icon. Do you think we will move toward a preservation, so to speak, of American pop culture, or move toward a global mashup of culture, references, and icons? First of all, fantastic question. We're really stirring the pot here, thinking about the text and what these media theorists are talking about. And when to back up this concept of how culture-specific pop culture will be in the future, I think there's a couple of directions that are not necessarily mutually exclusive. One would be this concept of monoculture, right? And this is a theorization of culture kind of walling off to preserve certain ideas or aspects for people groups. We see some examples of this in Asia with regards to censorship, maybe aspects of censorship in countries like China or North Korea and others. While at the same time, we also see increasing global practice of what we call multiculturalism. And multiculturalism is like that melting pot of America expanded onto a global scale where lots of ideas from different areas, from different regions, from different interests are converging, they're overlapping, they're influencing one another. And so there might be some dominant themes, some dominant popular themes that resonate with everyone the most, but we're still going to get some influences. Now, so I would suggest, back to your question, do you think we will move toward a preservation of American pop culture or toward that global mashup? Both. You got it. I think the real tension comes in what we do, if anything, to preserve local culture. All right, so follow this logic because there's something to what we're suggesting here, and that's that the things that we do at this local, communal, even familial level, there is a kind of fear, a panic that we lose that when everyone kind of likes the big stuff, the big shiny things, the Star Wars, the Disney, the, I don't know, NFL. Okay, and so that's where we experience a lot of our cultural anxieties and even some of these aggressive, defensive behaviors in America, in the U.S. I mean specifically. This is derivative of sometimes it's conscious, but a lot of times it's an unconscious, collective unconscious fear about the multicultural homogenization of our sacred rituals and perhaps daily communal pleasures. All right, so with regard to spreadable media, there's a question about, we talk the introduction. It's quite meaty, right? And so you all will find the reason we space this introduction out is it's relatively challenging. There are tons of new terms coming at you fast and furious now. And so there's a lot to process, and so we spread it out across only a few weeks, a few courses. Megan suggests, while reading about stickiness and one of the modes of drawing a consumer by placing an ad adjacent to content on a web page, I couldn't help but thinking of how much I loathe ads on websites. This question may not hold significance. Let's proceed. Let's see. Clearly, there is some quantifiable outcome by placing these ads. However, I have never clicked on an ad adjacent to content. I've never come across someone who has. People must be doing this, or if it is an effective marketing strategy. So am I the odd one out? Do you click on ads on web pages you visit? Great question. And I think, like all advertising, we try to run in the opposite direction. And surprisingly, advertising penetrates us more than we realize. I think one of the things I loved about having a DVR is an early adopter of that service. At least a more general sense. People had, what was it called? TiVo years before I did. So forget that, not an early adopter. But one of the things I loved about a DVR, of course, is let's flash right through those commercial breaks as quickly as possible. Let's get back to the programming. But we don't always get all the way there. You have to rewind a little. You have to, do all these kinds of things. Advertising finds a way in. Billboards still will catch your eye. We're going to come across things. Just the grocery store is nothing if not, aisle after aisle after aisle of advertisements. And the marketing, the internal advertisements, the advert designs on products is a competition vying for our attention and our consumer power. Okay, so back to cyber. Back to the cyber inside joke. You'd had to have watched, political elections last fall. Do you click on ads when you visit web pages? Let me say this. Once you do, maybe this is a little quest for you all. I don't know if it's a punishment or a revelation. But go ahead and click on something next time you notice that advertisement circulating around your Facebook page or wherever, and just be on the lookout for how quickly more ads, similar ads, if not the same campaign, creep up not only on your news feed, but on other websites you visit, right? Because that's happening. It's a thing. That said, advertising on the internet still remains a riddle that has not been fully or completely solved. It is definitely, something they're looking to improve on. When I say they, we're talking about the advertising industry, but they are in this weird liminal position between what they used to have stabilized in terms of advertising with television, other forms of mass communication like radio, and now how they have to shift those practices into new terrains where the consumers, not unlike the way we communicate, are taking in content in an asynchronous fashion, meaning not all at the same time. A couple of terms to keep in mind, and we'll explore these in future classes. Data mining, right? This concept of how they go in and quantify all of the likes and shares and interests and time spent on pages or whatever, and they turn that into numbers that they can read, and then they as we say, quantity, they quantify that data into something that is sellable, to marketers and thus translates into advertising, pots. But also algorithmic tracking. Okay, so that math we like to skip, get through as fast as possible. They use that math to determine what to sell to us, right? Just like Netflix. So you start to like something. Oh, you're a fan of, I don't know, Orange is the New Black. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, you're like, hey, here's some other genres or movies you might want to check out. What would it be? What would be something? Here's some more. Prison Break. Yeah. The Longest Yard. Prison movie. That's Shawshank Redemption. And then, or, women in prison films. Or, female, I don't know, entanglements of, love and resistance or whatever. So they, through data mining, through algorithmic tracking, they're trying to learn more about you so that they can send you the right, I'm going to use the forbidden air quotes, so they can send you the right ads that you will positively respond to in the future. Okay. Let's move on to some questions from, I believe, Will. William has some questions coming out of Spreadable Media. Jenkins coined a term participatory culture. How can you apply this to social media or social media use? So this concept of participatory culture. First of all, participatory culture, where's it at? There's no cover on this one, but Jenkins wrote a book in the mid-2000s called Convergence Culture, and this is where he does the grunt load, just gonna botch it all here today. We can't speak clearly on kind of a coffee and sugar diet, so that's not, and by that I mean that's what I chose to eat today. So didn't have the brain food. Not Convergence Culture. Where is it? Oh yeah, there we go. As I just destroy the shelf, right alignment. Aha! Textual poachers, television fans, and participatory culture. So, early 90s work, he was probably theorizing about even in the 80s. Participatory culture is basically a process of, Jenkins was performing a lot of ethnographic work. He was going to some of these earliest and most popular fan conventions. We talked about conventions last time. Sci-fi conventions this, Star Wars convention that. He was going to Star Trek conventions, among others, and studying fan groups and their interests and noticing how the passion they shared for popular culture artifacts was creating these pocket communities, people that would literally travel thousands of miles to congregate, to be together, to celebrate their media artifacts. And this still goes on today, and it doesn't even have to be about quote unquote niche interests or Geek Squad stuff, which that term itself has been broadened and lost some of its former stereotypical potency. But back to social media use, these types of terms do have updated conceptualization. So let's see, how can you apply a concept like participatory culture to this social media age? And 3 examples come to mind real quick before we transition to part 3 of our Infinite series this week. And the first is that Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones had a White Walker face morph app that coincided with the last year of advertising. That was an example of you're playing out your fandom through social media. Another is checking in, right? What we call, I did it again, GPS fandom. And another thing, you think about live tweeting sporting events, politics, TV, and so on. Live tweeting, GPS fandom, these are forms of participatory culture online.